Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good. Fred, Misty, Trisha. Good. I think this time I'm going to take attendance at the end so that way we can get started as soon as possible. I'll just wait a few minutes. I apologize for the squeaky sounds. I have a puppy, and when you hear those squeaky sounds, that means he's not biting something he's not supposed to. So it's actually not a bad sound. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and I'm gonna show you a couple of documents. I see Kelsey, Julia have joined in, and I'll take attendance at the end. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and you will see your course. So I'm gonna go to the modules first, and I'm gonna go to the Proctor Test 1 module, and you have the instructions here. And these are very detailed instructions, but the only thing that you will not find here is when it opens. And so we're going to talk about when it opens and when it closes. So everything that you need to know, that you're allowed 2 hours, you are allowed a scientific calculator, but this chapter, you're really just adding and subtracting numbers, like when you're working with sets or even the Venn diagrams. You always have a practice test for the the chapter test and the proctor test, and that's actually extra credit. So your practice test is always closing the same day as your actual test. You probably have taken your test for chapter 2. I think is due tonight. Maybe you've taken it, maybe you're working on taking it. So make sure you take the practice test because that's going to be actually extra credit. Also, um, I mentioned here scratch paper. You get partial credit for scratch paper, but you have to number the problems. If you didn't do that for test 1, make sure you do it for test 2 and for the proctor exam. The problems have to be numbered, and you don't always have work to show, but if there's any work whatsoever, always write it down on scratch paper for the chapter test and the proctor exams because you're only allowed one try for those. So you have extra credit from the practice test and then partial credit from the scratch paper. You're not allowed notes or books only on those two proctor exams. So I know it actually puts a lot of pressure on you to do well. Always do your very best on everything else. 70% of the class is with open notes. The and this is the 30% that is not. So as far as when it opens and when it closes, so when you go to the class calendar, you will see that that proctor exam is gonna actually close. Let me see, I need to select the right class. I have too many here. You probably have fewer and might be able to, I think this is it. You might be able to quickly select your class, but you'll see, yeah, the practice test and the test one are due today. Practice test two and test two are due next Monday. And we are working kind of way ahead um, of schedule, but it's because I also want you to work on finding a proctor. So the options for proctoring are proctor you, but that costs you money. The testing center on campus, but then you have to be kind of local or nearby to take advantage of that. So there is the option to have a third party proctor, and you need a proctor agreement form. So make sure you email me and ask me for that form in order to for you to have a third party proctor. But it cannot just be anybody. It has to be somebody that is working on an official capacity, like maybe a high school principal or a librarian. It cannot be your next door neighbor that is a retired teacher. There has to be somebody in an official capacity. So then you see here that on the 24th is when the practice proctor test one actually closes. The practice and the actual test, they close, and they close at 5 p.m. Both of them actually, the practice test closes at 3 p.m. The proctor test closes at 5 p.m. So that's gonna be, you may want to make sure you make a note to yourself that you actually have um at that closing time of 5 p.m. And you always have 3 school days for the exam. So that means that if it closes at 5 p.m. on the 24th, it opened at 7 a.m. on Monday, it's the 22nd. If for some reason some of you would rather take it over the weekend, I don't have a problem with opening it earlier, um, but you have to be done with test two. You cannot be taking the proctor exam if you have not finished test two. So I would do it on a one-on-one basis if the weekend works better for somebody, and I understand that that happens. For for the final proctor exam, I did open it because we finished on let me see. Let me go to July. I'm I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but because the semester ends on a Monday, then I do have set the second proctor exam to open on Wednesday, the 22nd, and that does give you a longer period of time on the weekend because of the way the semester ends. So if for some reason you want me to open it earlier, um, so that you have the weekend, maybe you rather do it on your days off or whatever reason, email me and I will check and see that you've done your work prior to that, like test two and the work, and you're done with that. I'm not opposed to that, but I wouldn't open it unless you have finished all of that. Okay, so let me go back to the class. So there are two files, one that I'm going to write on that it says follow along, and one that it says review. So I have this already open here, maybe not. Let me open that. So this file is a bit strange because it has all of the objectives in the class, like objectives or topics, and it has the problem numbers from every section. So what happens is your practice test is like the test. It doesn't have the help me solve it. It doesn't have view an example. It doesn't have videos and all that. It's just like a test. But you may feel like you need to practice on something in particular. So what I would recommend is take your practice test, make notes of like topics that you're struggling with, then come to this review that is really by topics. And let's say you realize that you're having trouble with and or statements, then you see the numbers are from section 2.3, and I have 2.325, 2.326, and 2.393. So now I'm going to show you how to find these exercises now that your homework is closed, or after your homework is closed, how to find these exercises so that you can actually practice on. So let me come back here and open another page, another window with your class. So say you have taken your practice test, you make notes of what you've missed and you're struggling with. So now and the homework assignments are closed, but you want to practice on that. So we're going to come to Access Pearson. We're going to open Pearson, and this is not something that I introduce you to from the very beginning because there's not a need, but now there is a need because homework assignments are closed. So I open My Lab and Mastering. And like I said, the assignments are closed. I don't know what's opening here. I may have clicked on something by mistake. So one way to access that is through the ebook, chapter 2. And remember, I kind of zero in on this and or statements from section 2.3. So I'm looking for 2.3, 25, 26, and 93. So I'm here, I click on chapter 2, then I click on section 2.3. I call this the section level. So you go to e-text contents, click on the chapter, click on the section. When you get to the section level, you have 3 links. One has all the videos that my lab has to offer for section 2.3. You don't want to necessarily do that because not every question from 2.3 will be on the proctor exam. The e-text, it opens the section 2.3 in the ebook. Now, the study plan has the list of all the questions that my lab has to offer for section 2.3. Notice it says 73 questions. Your homework 2.3 did not have 73 questions. But now we're looking for some specific ones like 2.325, 2.326, and when I come back here, 2.393. So then now you can actually spend some time just on those questions. And usually the study plan has a large pool of questions. The homework has fewer questions. The proctor exam has fewer questions from that section and that particular topic. So now when you open this question, let's see, And that means that icon means that there is a video associated with it. Here's another one. 2.393 is in that list. So when you open this question, it actually looks like the homework. It has help me solve it, view an example, and more help if needed. Like in this case, there's a video. The practice test and the test doesn't have these tools that you have here. That's why I'm showing you this documents that I posted here. So after you take your practice test, you make notes of what you missed, you come back here, and then you can look at these specific questions by going through Access Pearson. And then when you get to Access Pearson, you go e-textbook, e-text contents, a chapter, a section, and then the study plan. So keep that in mind because that's going to actually be um, very, very helpful. Something else that I want to show you is at the end of every chapter in your ebook, there is a summary. And I'm going to actually write some of these notes, um, not today, but when I post the written notes or transcript of the meeting, you'll have this in case you forget. But when you go to that e-textbook and you click on a particular chapter, before you click on a section, notice there are chapter opener, chapter review exercises, and chapter test. Somewhere in between, actually, I don't remember if it's between the review and the chapter test, there's a chapter summary. So we're going to look. So click on the chapter review exercises. And this is open in your ebook in Access Pearson. So let me backtrack one. Let me go one page, the page before, and that's actually where the summaries are. So it's before the chapter review questions. So here is a good review of symbols that we use all throughout the sections in chapter 2. It even mentions examples in pages. So for example, if I'm going to write down this page 87 so I don't have to scroll back to it. But say, for example, um, you come across, you come across some of the symbols and you want some review and look at some examples here. You could actually put page 44 here and press enter, and it will jump to these exercises. So it's giving you some reference to some examples in the book. Now, let me type 87 so I can go back to the summary. And sometimes we don't cover everything that you see here for every section, but at least it has a summary of the symbols. So let me go back to e-textbook. Now I'm going to click on chapter 3 and the chapter review exercises. But I'm going to go back. There's not a link for the summary. So I have to click on the exercises to get to the summary. So here at the bottom, it starts all the names, the symbols, the way, the wording that is read, and then the symbolic form of writing them. All of that is summarized here. The basic truth tables, this is actually very important. I don't know how I did that, sorry. This is actually very, very important. And one of the most common or the trickiest one of truth tables is the conditional. The only time is false is at notice that the conditional is P arrow Q. That's if P then Q. And the only way that it is false is when P is false, but the result is um, actually P is true right here, and the result is false. So keep that in mind because this is going to help us a lot. Now, the biconditional, that's actually false when true, when we have true and false, false and true, but when you have true and false, it's actually true. We'll go through some examples here, but this is a good reference because it has the basic connectives here, conjunction, disjunction, conditional, and biconditional. So I'm actually going to leave this open here for us for reference as we review some exercises. Okay, so let me go back to our modules. And there's another document here, which is, I say it's the document that you can follow along and you can make notes of, but I've already converted that into a smartboard document so that I can write on. And that's why I said some of the instructions that I mentioned here, like you only have one try, you have 120 minutes, and when it opens, when it closes, I'm gonna actually type it here. I'm gonna remind you how to find that study plan like we did and the summaries in your ebook. But I have selected some exercises here for us to go over. I'm gonna make it bigger. And it's still a little bit, it's actually kind of blurry and hard to read. But that was the only way that I could have all questions shown and show that exercise. So I'm gonna write some of that information so it's a little bit clearer. So it says that in a survey of employees at a fast food restaurant, it was determined that 15 cooked food. So let me write that down. So 15 cooked food. 16 wash dishes. 21 work on the cash register. 8 cook food and wash. Sorry. And then 7 cook food and work on the cash register. And then 9 wash dishes. And did the cash register. And then 5 did all 3 jobs. And 4 did none. And then they ask you a series of questions, like how many employees were surveyed and all of that. But the best way to do this would be with a Venn diagram because it shows all the different a lot of these jobs actually overlap. So we have a big rectangle here that represents all the employees. And it says that there were 15 that cooked. So I'm gonna write C for cook and 15. Then there were 16 that washed dishes. Then there were 21 that work on the cash register. Okay, so then there are some that did two things. So for example, it says that 8 cook and wash dishes. So the one in blue and the one in red, that's where you have 8 of them that cook and wash dishes. Then you have 7 that cook and work the cash register. So right here, 7 cook and work the cash register. Then you have 9 that wash and work the cash register. Nine wash. Yes. I think I put that in the wrong place. So 8 cook and wash, so that should have been here. So they cook and wash. That was actually 8. And then the 7 is, no, the 9 is wash and did the cash register. So this one should be 9. Okay, then we have 5 that did all 3 jobs and 4 that did none. So the 5 are actually here in the middle. That's the place where all 3 sets overlap. So there are 5 that actually are right in the middle. And the 4 that did none are part of the employees, but they're not part of those sets. So 4 did none. Okay, so before we can answer any of these questions, we need to kind of find all the information in the different pieces. So in this area that overlaps here, this is a total of 8. But if there are 5 in the middle, that means in this area here, you will have 3. If this whole area is 9, but 5 are in the middle, there will be 4 here. If this area here overlapping for the blue and the green is a total of 8, but there are 5 in the middle, then there will be 3. So I'm working from the inside out. Then look at the set of 15. The one that cook, there are 15 of them. 3 are already here in this area, 5 in the middle, and 3 in this other area. So together, right in this common areas, you already have 11. So in this if you subtract 11 from 15, then that's going to give you 4 for this area here. Now we do the same with 16. 16 is the whole set in red, but the common areas have a 3, a 5, and a 4. So that when you add that, that's 12. If you subtract 12 from 16, that's going to give you 4. For the green, there's a total of 21, but the common areas have 3, 5, and 4. So that will be 8 and 4, that's 12. Subtract 12 from 21, and that's going to give you a 9. So now let's look at the questions that we have. So it says, how many employees were surveyed? So basically, what is the total number of employees? So when I do that, I don't want to count any of them twice. So if I start with blue, then I have 15. If I move to red, I cannot add 16 because out of the blue, what I highlighted in yellow has already been counted. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to count this 4 that is here and this 4 that is here. And now I've taken care of all the red, but some of them were actually part of the blue set. Now I look at the set in green, and I've already counted the 3 and the 5 that are with the blue, and I've counted the 4 with the red. So the only one left is actually 9 for the green set. And there are the 4 that did not do any of those jobs. So now when I do add all of those, and that's one of the few times that you actually need a calculator to add something like that, then when you add those, that's going to be equal to that 37 that you see right there. So you have 15, let's see, 15, that's 19, 23, 32 and 4, that's not right. So 19 and 4 is 23, 42, I'm missing something. 15 for the red, 4 and the 4, and for the 9. Maybe I'm not adding correctly. Let me get my calculator. So that would be 15 plus 4 plus 4 plus 9 plus 4. 36. I'm missing 1. Let me double check my arithmetic. So that was 8 and 5 in the middle. So that was a 3. This one was 9, so that's a 4, and that's an 8. I remember a 7 in there. I think that's what I've done wrong. 7 cook and did the cash register. That's it. This was a 7. So then when I take 5 away from 7, this should be a 2. And so now coming back to the 15, I start with 15. For the red ones, I only count the 4 and the 4. And I think that 2 is going to make a difference in here. because I have 4 and 5, that's 9, that's 11, and subtract that, so that's going to give me 10 here. Okay, so then for the 15, I start with 15 with the blue, then for the red one I have 4, and then um for the green ones I have, sorry about that. It's my dogs are misbehaving. Then for the green one we have 10, and that's gonna give us 37. And that will be 10, and that will be a total of 37. Okay, so the next question says, how many of the employees only cook food? So it says 15 cook food, but then all the ones that overlap here did something else in addition. So the only ones that cook food will be 4. Why in the world? I have 5. Because I didn't change that. I apologize. So if the total is 15 and this is 10, so then this would be 5. I didn't change that one after I corrected that too. So then that one is 5. Then C, it says how many employees only operated the cash register. So here the green is the cash register, and all this 3 are doing something else. So 10 only operated the cash register. D, how many employees washed dishes and operated the cash register? So before I look at the next part of that question, when I think about washing and operating the cash register, then this is the 9 that I mentioned here. But then it says, but did not cook food. So that will be the 5 that overlap here. So that's going to be only this 4 that wash dishes and operate the cash register, but did not cook food. The next question is very similar. It says, how many employees wash dishes and operated the cash register? Um, Okay, so this one is different. It says, E says, how many employees washed dishes or operated the cash register? So let me write this one here because the or means they may have done both or they may have done one or the other. So when I think about washing dishes, then I think about 15. When I think about the cash register, I think about 21. But then I don't want anybody that cook food, and that shouldn't be 15. That should be the 16, the red that I have there. So when I add those, that's gonna give me 37. But now I don't want anybody that cook food. So when you look at the red set and you look at the green set, anything that overlaps with the blue one will actually have cooked food. The 3, the 5, and the 2. So I need to subtract 3, 5, and 2. So that's going to be actually a total of 10. That's 17. It's supposed to be 18. So wash dishes was 16. Operated the cash register was 21. And then 3, 5, and That's actually 10, that's 17. I've done something wrong there. Make sure that I've done all my arithmetic correctly here. How many employees washed dishes and operated the cash register? So I have those numbers 16 and 21 correct, and that will be 37. You know what? So when I have the 16 and the 21, okay, hold on a second here. So this one over the ones where the blue, where the yellow, the red set and the green overlap, that will be 5 and 9. So I shouldn't count those twice. So I'm actually, let me highlight that one in green. So these ones are overlapping here. So I don't have 37 per se. I'm going to have to subtract 9 first. So that's going to give me 26. Okay, then I have two more parts that I need to actually subtract because that's going to be the 5. I don't want to count the 5. I don't want to count the 3. And I don't want to count the 2. But that's going to give me 21. What am I missing there? So wash dishes. Maybe I'm looking at this. Let me get rid of the highlighting area. Okay, let me get rid of that. So wash dishes or did the cash register? Not both, but they did. They washed dishes or did the cash register? I get it now. So this one's, let me highlight that in green. This one's wash dishes. This one's did the cash register, and this two did both. But the ones that are shared with the blue actually would have cooked. And since it says they washed dishes or they did the cash register but did not cook, it has to be only those. So that's going to be 4 plus the 4 that did both plus the 10 that only did the cash register. Okay, then F says how many of the employees did at least 2 of these jobs? So we know which ones did all 3 jobs, and that's the 5 that is in the middle. But the ones that did 2 jobs, it says at least 2 jobs. That means 2 jobs or more. So we will include the 5 that did 3. We will include this 3 that did cook and wash dishes. We will include this 4 here that wash dishes and work the cash register. And we will include this 2 that cook and work with the cash register. And that will give us 14. Now, let me make this a little bit smaller now. So we can look at all of those parts. So I like to usually do the diagram and then worry about the questions, just to figure out in the diagram what each part still has when you think about where they overlap, and that way I'm not counting one of them more than the other. This is actually, it's hard to read, but this is problem 2.5.10. Okay, the next question, I'm going to make it bigger. This is actually writing the statement and then doing a truth table for that. And this one is actually question 3.257. And I'm going to actually do this one live in Pearson, but I may refer back. That's going to change actually things a little bit differently. Some of the terms. So it may not be exactly the question that you see there. Actually, let me look in here. I'm going to go to section 3.2, the study plan, and is 3.257. So it says write the compound statement in terms of the simple statements P. P is married people are healthier than single people. Q is married people are more economically stable than single people. And R is children of married people do better on a variety of indicators. But those are the simple statements or the single statements that you have. But then you have the compound statement that says married people are healthier than single people or more economically stable than single people. So the word or is, let me see, I have that summary still here. So that's what we call a disjunction. That's the or statement. So it's going to be the V between them, P and Q are going to be connected by a V. That's a disjunction. That's a word, that's the or statement. But then notice that there is another part to that statement and there's a comma. So anything before the comma will be in parentheses. So I can tell already that B and D will not work because in parentheses they have actually a conjunction, which is the and statement. It would have to be A or C because it has the the or statement. So then it says children of married people do better on a variety of indicators. So in parentheses will be P or Q, which is a disjunction. And it says but, and this is a little bit tricky. The word but, it's not really saying something negative. It's actually saying, in addition, the children of married people do better on a variety of indicators. So this but is actually an and statement. So it will be a disjunction in the middle and a conjunction on the outside of that parentheses. Okay, so now we're going to set up the truth table. So one of the things you have to do here is choose the correct statement for the parentheses. So remember, it was P or Q, and they give you the truth values for P and Q. So we're only working with those right here for that part. So for the or statement, you get a true for the or statement or disjunction if they're both true. So I'm going to choose true, and those are both true, so that will be true. But now the compound statement is referring to the final statement. So now you're saying this and are. So you're saying this is true and are is true. So the compound statement will be true. This is true and are is false. And that will actually be false. Let me find that. In a conjunction, you have a false if one of your parts is false. One is true and the other one is false, or one is false and the other one is true, or both of them are false. So the second part of this statement was actually a false. So we're going to check. And then they keep giving you more lines because for every statement, when you compare two statements anyway, there are actually four possibilities. So now, remember, we're only doing what's in parentheses here. You're saying P or Q, so true or false. So in that's a conjunction. No, that's a disjunction. So the disjunction, when one of them is false, as long as one of them is true, then you'll have a true. So we're saying true or false, so that will still be true. True or false, that will still be true. But then you have an and statement with are. You're saying this and are. So you're saying true and true, that will be true. True and false, and that's what we call a conjunction, the word and, the upside down V, and that requires that they're both true in order to get a true statement. So true and false will give you a false statement. And it's going to populate that until we have actually all the different possibilities. So again, we're only doing what's in parentheses, and that's an or statement. So we're saying false or true, that would be true. False or true, that would be true. But then we're saying and with the are statement, so true and true will be true. True and false will give you false. Again, the parentheses, P and P or Q. So that will be false, false or false. And that's a little bit different in a conjunction. If you in a disjunction, the or statement, if they're both false, then your disjunction will be false. One of them, at least one of them has to be true. So we have false or false, so that will be false. False or false, that will be false. Now we have we have a conjunction, which is an and statement. And in order for an and statement or conjunction to be true, they both have to be true. So false and true will be false, and false will be false. Then this says use the truth table to indicate the set of conditions that make the compound statement true or state that no such conditions exist. So remember, this is your compound statement. And when you think about it, where is true, or you could concentrate on where is false, but there are fewer places where it's true. It is true when everything is true. Here, it is true when two of them are true. It is true when at least two of them are true. So let's see if this says um, the statement is true when P, Q, and R are true. And that's actually true of the first statement, the first line. But let's keep reading. This statement is true when P and Q are true, or R is true. And this statement is true when P, Q, or R are true. That means any of them will be true, and that doesn't seem right in some of these ones here. So C is not correct. D, the statement is true when P or Q is true and R is true. So when R is true, P and Q, one of them is true. So when you think about it, we got true here if P or Q was true, one or the other. But then R had to be true in order to work. So we got truths here, but then R had to be true in order for this to be true. So I think um, D will be correct because in order for us to get a true here, P or Q could be true. But in order to get a true statement for the and statement, then that meant this had to be true and R had to be true. Okay. I'm gonna go to my document here, and then the next question I have is to construct a truth table for the given statement. And I'm not gonna do this one live, um, just because I find it easier doing it on paper because the conditional is actually very, very tricky. So let me come back to the book here. So a conditional is the one that has P and arrow to Q, and that is if P, then Q. And it's very particular because the only time a conditional is true, um, actually, the only time that is false is, if you notice right here, is if P is true and Q, the result, is false. That's the only time that you have a false. And in this particular example, you have a biconditional first in parentheses. So we have to work this out first before I worry about this part. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend, since I'm doing this by hand, I'm going to extend my table. And you already have true and true. So it would be true and false, false and true, and false and false. And those will be um, my for my simple statements, those will be my possibilities. So for the biconditional, the biconditional is the one that has a double arrow. A biconditional is true if both statements are true. If one statement is false, it's false. If both statements are false, then it's true. That's a little bit different. So in and that usually is read as if and only if. If P is true, if and only if Q is true, then this will be true. But if one of them is false, then this will be false. This will be false. And if both of them are false, if P and Q are false, for the biconditional, that will be true. And this is the reason why I rather do this kind of by hand, because now you have this expression in parentheses and you have a conditional with Q. And so I would rather actually, let me go ahead and I would rather scratch this out and on paper and write the possibilities for Q. So Q could be true, it could be true and true. Actually, I'm going to write them from here, the way they're written here. I'm just going to copy those. But the order matters. So it makes it easier for me to think. I'm doing a conditional and I'm saying if true, then true. So then the result here is for the whole compound statement. But the order matters. So this is saying if true, then true. So that will be true. If false, then false. That will be true. The only time a conditional is false is if you say if, and I think I'm looking at it. Yeah. Okay, so here, if false, then true, that will be true. Now, if it says if true, then false, that's the only time that the final, the conditional will actually be a false. And that's a hard one to rationalize. So I wanted to make sure we look at this example, but this is what we're looking at for the conditional. If true, then true, that's true. If true, then false, that's false. If false, then true, that's true. If false, then false is still true. So it's easier to kind of rewrite it on paper and think of the order, because the order matters. The direction of that arrow matters with the conditional. And then this is the final answer for the compound statement. Let me save this. Okay, and I'm gonna do this one live because it's hard to read. Is 3.327. And I'm gonna actually close this one. So it should be chapter 3 and then section 3.3 and study plan. I'm looking for 3.327. So it says P equals you'll enjoy your physics class. Q equals you understand the mathematics. And R equals you'll just be very confused. Write the following statement in symbolic form and construct a truth table. So it says you'll enjoy your physics class if and only if you understand the mathematics, comma. So that means that statement before the comma has to be in parentheses. And notice that it says if and only if. That's a biconditional, the two arrow one. So P, then the double arrow and Q. So it should be this one. And that's in parentheses. Then it says or, you'll be very confused. Or is a disjunction, and that's actually the V. But this should be in parentheses. So you should have the biconditional in parentheses. So it would be one of like the first two. And then R, since it says or, it would be an or statement. So it would be this one. Okay, so now you're doing a truth table. So remember for the biconditional, you're saying true, if and only if true. So that will be true. But then you're saying or R, and R is true. So that's true or true. And the biconditional is only false. The biconditional is only false when you have one part is false. It says true and false, false and true. So then the biconditional will be false. Let's come back to this one. So then I still have true or true. And then this is an or statement. So that will be true or false. That will be true. Now, this is the biconditional. If, true, if and only if false, then this will be false. Now you're saying false or true, and that at least one of them is true. For the next one, if true or true if and only if false, so that means the biconditional is false. Then you're saying false or false. There is no other choice but false for the or statement. So false if and only if true, that will be false. Then false or true, that will be true. So false if and only if true, that will be false. That's the biconditional. If one of them is false, then the whole statement is false. Now, false or false, for the or statement, that will be false. False if and only false, and that's a hard one to remember. But for the biconditional, if you have false and false, like false if and only if false, the answer will be true. So this part will be true. Then you're saying true or false, so that will be true. False, if and only if false, that will be true. True or false, that will make it true. Okay, and I have one last example, and that is not exactly from the live exercises, but it's a written one because we haven't done much of that negation. Okay, so it says, given this statement, which is the negation of the statement in parentheses, construct a truth table. So when you have two simple statements, these are your possibilities anyway. True and true, true and false, false and true, or false and false. It gets more complicated when there are three of them, but those are your basic possibilities. Notice that inside the parentheses, we're negating Q or P. So we negate P, which means if this is true, then this will be false, the opposite. If this is true, that will be false. Then if that's false and false, then this will be true and true. Since they're not giving me the spots for this, I can do it. I can make as many columns as I like. Then I am taking the negation of P and Q. Okay? So basically, I'm saying and to with those two statements. And the order doesn't matter with and. So if I say true or false, that will be false. For the and statement, that's the conjunction. False or false, that will be false. True or true, true and true, so that will be true. And false and true, then that will be false. And that's what's in parentheses. I'm going to put in parentheses just to realize, so that we realize that now we're taking the negation of that. So we do order of operations the same way that we do in other math classes. We're really working out what's inside the parentheses first, but you don't have to redo everything. This here is actually the negation of this, because it's what I have in parentheses. So then my final answer will be the negation of false means it's true. The negation of false is true. The negation of true is false. The negation of false is true. So take your time when you're doing this and do like when you work it out. I know a lot of times the exercises are actually, you know, you may not need to show work, but if you write it on paper and you do the steps for the columns, if you do extra columns as needed, it may actually make things easier for you. Also on your tests, every test, if you can show me any of your steps, I will actually give you partial credit. So let me go back to the class, and I'm gonna take attendance in a little bit when I'm done with what I'm gonna say here. So let me go back to the modules, and let me go back to the Zoom meetings. I think I just passed them, yes. So I will make this recording available probably by tomorrow. So if anybody wants to refer back to the recording, I'm gonna actually put it right here below that. But anybody that missed tonight has an opportunity to um, to listen to the recording and do the written assignment if they missed it. And they have until Thursday, June 18th. So on Friday morning, I will actually post kind of like a PDF of what I wrote in here. Okay. Some of them we did live, so you'll have them on the video, but some of them I wrote. And I will also make sure that I have added all the information that you need to know here and a reminder of where to find those. So expect the recording. Sometimes it takes a couple of hours to half a day for that to be here. So expect the recording to be posted here in the next day or so. And then Friday morning, most likely I will do that where the proctor exam is, the proctor test one. I will post um, like the written notes, meaning what we did in this document here. But that will be Friday. So that way everybody has a chance that didn't attend to listen to the recording and make up their assignment. Okay, so now let me make sure I take attendance. Well, I'm gonna stop the share. I think that's the only way I'll be able to see that. But I need your camera on. Okay, Sophia, very good. Brett, I saw you earlier. Thank you. Misty, okay. Kelsey, I see Trisha and Julia. I think Evan. I didn't see Evan with your camera on. Okay, there you are, Evan. Okay, so I think I have all of you, so you'll automatically get a perfect score for attending. I know we're doing this kind of early, but I wanted to make sure you knew what to expect for the proctor exam. It gives you time to email me and ask me for the proctor form. And if you need to go back to some of the problems we review, the recording will be there and the written document will be posted on Friday. And any questions? Or too many to think about? Okay, so keep posting those questions in the discussion if something comes up and you need some help. And don't forget, scratch paper with problems number will give you a partial credit on your chapter test and the proctor exams, not the quizzes, because the progress quizzes you have 3 tries, and the diagnostic quizzes I turn into hundreds every week. Okay, have a good evening then. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
I had a question about, sorry, let me turn my camera on, about the third party proctoring. So my mom is the director of our academic center. We live in Bartlesville, me and Brett. So we
Mhm.
were wondering how to get the paper to be able to take it in
So
town.
email me and I will send you the form.
Okay, I will.
But it cannot be somebody that is related to you.
Okay, that's fine. We have other people that are there too
Yeah,
that could do
that
it.
that would be fine. And that
Okay,
happens. uh, I don't know how big Barsville is, but it happens in small towns. Everybody's related,
it
but
is. Yeah.
just find somebody that works there that is not related to
Okay,
you, because
that's
I
great.
think it's
I
one
can
of the
find someone there.
stipulations. Just email me and I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Julia.
Okay,
Take
have a good
care.
night.
Bye.
Thank
You too.
you.
Thank you.